The sky of Valara Prime was a calm shade of blue, but the people beneath it felt no peace. Their world, once full of quiet villages and fields of silver grain, now lived under the shadow of fear. Above the planet, high in orbit, the fleet of the Draxan Empire waited like a predator. Their ships were sharp, black, and cruel, covering the stars like storm clouds. The Valari were not a warrior race. Their history was one of peace and learning. They had built libraries, gardens, and cities shaped by art. For many generations, they believed war belonged only to history books. But now reality had changed. The Draxans had come with demands, and those demands were clear: surrender the planet, surrender the people, and serve the Empire, or face destruction. The Valari Council met every day in the Great Hall of Crystals, a building made of shining stone that caught the sunlight and scattered it in colors. Once the hall was a place for debate about philosophy and trade. Now it echoed with worried voices, whispers of survival and desperate arguments. Counselor Mirai, an elder with silver hair and calm eyes, spoke first. "They have cut off our supply lines. Our ships cannot leave the system. Food stores are shrinking. Medicine is already in short supply. If the blockade continues, we will suffer greatly." Across the table, Counselor Reth slammed his hand on the crystal surface. "And what do you suggest, Mirai? That we bow before them? That we hand over our people like cattle? The Draxans are not conquerors who give mercy. They enslave. They destroy cultures. If we give in, Valara will die in spirit even if the bodies live." A heavy silence followed. Everyone knew Reth's words were true, but no one wanted to say it aloud. The Draxans had conquered dozens of worlds. They were feared across the galaxy, and still no power dared stop them. The Valari had sent messages. They had begged the Galactic Union, the council of many races, for help. But replies came slow and weak. The Union feared the Draxans too much. Some worlds even pretended not to hear the call, choosing silence instead of involvement. In the homes and streets of Valara Prime, the people waited. Farmers could not sell their harvest because the skies were closed. Children asked questions parents could not answer. Will the Draxans come tomorrow? Will we have to leave? Why does no one help us? Every night, families looked up at the stars and saw the faint lights of enemy ships moving against the dark. Far above the planet, in the command vessel of the Draxan fleet, Admiral Kor watched with satisfaction. He was tall, armored in black metal plates, his face hidden behind a cruel mask. To him, Valara was nothing more than another jewel to add to the Empire's crown. "Let them wait," he told his officers. "Let them starve. Their council will break. Their people will beg for mercy. And when they do, we will take everything." The Draxans enjoyed patience. Their blockade was simple, efficient. No ship entered, no ship left. The Valari could scream to the stars, but no answer would come. On the surface, a young Valari named Alira sat by the crystal river that ran through her village. She was a healer's apprentice, trained to mend small wounds and soothe sickness with herbs. Now she found her hands trembling each time she looked up at the sky. She could see the faint shadows of the Draxan fleet passing like dark fish across the heavens. Her grandfather, old and gentle, sat beside her. "Do not lose hope, child," he whispered. "Even the darkest night ends when the sun rises." "But what if the sun never rises?" she asked, her voice quiet. "What if no one comes?" The old man had no answer. He only held her hand, hoping his warmth could hide his fear. Days turned into weeks. The Valari felt their strength slipping. Ships in orbit monitored every move. Cargo vessels were trapped in spaceports. Trade had died. Entire villages survived only on what they could grow, but the season was dry and the harvest was weak. Hunger began to whisper through the land. Counselor Mirai walked through the markets of the capital city. Once full of laughter, music, and colors, the streets now seemed gray and tired. Merchants had nothing to sell but scraps. People traded old tools, broken machines, even family heirlooms for a little food. Children clutched their mothers, eyes wide and hollow. Mirai's heart ached. She thought of her own family, her own grandchildren. She could not imagine them growing up in chains. She looked up at the sky and whispered a prayer, though she did not know if any higher power listened. One night the council gathered again. The chamber was colder than usual, as if the very stones shared their fear. Counselor Reth rose to speak. "We cannot wait much longer. If no one comes, we must choose surrender or fight. And I say fight, even if it means our end." Better to fall as Valari than to live as Draxan slaves. His words brought murmurs of agreement but also fear. Could they fight with no army? With no weapons? With no allies? It seemed impossible. Mirai stood slowly. I too wish for courage, Reth. But we must think of the children, of the weak, of those who cannot fight. If we resist without hope, we bring only destruction. Yet, she paused, her voice trembling. Yet my heart tells me we are not forgotten. Somewhere someone will hear our cries. Her words were soft, almost fragile. Many shook their heads. Hope, they believed, was a luxury they could no longer afford. And then, it happened. It was the third week of the blockade when the Valari Observatory detected something unusual. Far beyond the edge of the system, a ship had entered real space. It was not Draxan. It was not Union. Its design was strange, sharp, massive. The astronomers stared in shock. Their equipment showed only one signature, a single vessel traveling at incredible speed toward Valara Prime. News spread quickly through the capital. People gathered in the streets, whispering, arguing, daring not to believe. Could it be another enemy, or could it be the help they had begged for? At first, the council dismissed it. One ship could not change anything. Against the Draxan fleet, a lone vessel was nothing more than dust before the storm. But then the images came, clear scans of the approaching craft. It was black and silver, shaped like a blade. Its engines glowed with fierce light. Along its hull were marks and letters in a language few Valari recognized. Yet one word appeared again and again, written in bold lines: Terran. The Valari had heard whispers of Terrans before. Stories passed through traders and wanderers. They were a young species from a distant world called Earth. They were fragile compared to others, short-lived, reckless. And yet everywhere they went, danger seemed to follow, and somehow they survived. Some races called them chaotic. Others called them lucky. A few called them dangerous. Now one of their ships had come. And not just any ship. Scans showed it was armed heavily. More heavily than most Union cruisers. Its shield energy pulsed strong. Its mass was enormous for a single vessel. The Valari Council stared at the data. Why are they here? One asked. Are they allies? Another whispered. Or are they just passing through? The answers would come soon enough. As the Terran ship crossed into the system, the Draxan fleet reacted at once. Their long-range channels lit up with signals. Ships shifted formation, weapons charged. To them, the arrival of this unknown vessel was an insult, a challenge. In the capital, Elira stood with hundreds of others in the square. She gazed at the sky, heart pounding, as the first faint glimmer of the Terran ship appeared like a new star. Her grandfather's words returned to her mind. Even the darkest night ends when the sun rises. Perhaps this was their sunrise. Perhaps help had finally come. The people of Valara Prime stood under the night sky, watching the heavens with wide eyes. The mysterious ship had entered their system. It was still far away, but its presence was like a drumbeat echoing through the silence of despair. In the capital square, Elira felt her heart race as she looked up. Beside her, her grandfather leaned on his staff, squinting. It is real, he whispered. A ship we have never seen before. All across the planet, citizens gathered on rooftops, hills, and fields, gazing upward. After weeks of fear and silence, there was finally movement. Something unexpected. Something that was not Draxan. In the Great Hall of Crystals, the Council watched the readings from the observatory. The ship was massive, longer than any vessel the Valari had built. Its design was harsh and functional, not beautiful like their own creations. It looked like a weapon shaped into a starship. Counselor Mirai leaned forward. Who are they? What do they want with us? Counselor Reth shook his head. I do not know. But they are not Draxan. That is enough reason to hope. Or to fear, Mirai replied quietly. As they spoke, a new message came from the observatory. The unknown ship was not hiding. It was traveling directly toward Valara Prime, its engines burning bright. And more, it had sent out a signal. High above the planet, the Draxan Admiral received the same news. Admiral Kor stood in his command chamber, watching the data scroll across his screens. His officers hissed in annoyance. One ship? One sneered. How foolish. Do they think a single vessel can challenge the might of the Draxan fleet? Kor's masked face remained still. Investigate the signal. I want to know who dares to enter my system without permission. A moment later, the translation system revealed the message. It was short, calm, and confident. "This is the Terran warship Indomitable. We come in answer to the call for help. Valara is under our protection." The officers laughed. "Terrans? The small species from the spiral arm? They are barely more than primitives." This is a joke, but Admiral Kor did not laugh. His instincts told him this was no joke. Something about the message felt sharp, dangerous, like a blade hidden in plain sight. The Valari Council received the same signal. When the words were spoken aloud in the chamber, silence fell. None could believe it. "Terrans?" one counselor asked, confused. "They answered our cry?" said another, voice trembling with hope. Counselor Mirai felt tears sting her eyes. She had prayed for help, even when others mocked her hope. Now a ship had come, a ship that claimed to protect them. Counselor Reth rose to his feet. "Send them our gratitude. Send them our welcome. Tell them Valara stands with them, whoever they are." But not all were convinced. Counselor Thane, a cautious man, frowned. "One ship cannot defeat the Draxan fleet. What if they are reckless? What if their presence brings only more destruction upon us?" Mirai answered softly. "Perhaps. But even the smallest candle can fight the dark, and we are already in the dark." On the surface, the message spread quickly. The Valari people whispered the name Terran. Many had never heard it before. Others remembered strange tales, stories of humans who had survived wars against stronger foes, of a species that fought with wild courage. Elira listened to the news in the village square. Her heart filled with a strange feeling, half hope, half fear. She looked up at the stars and whispered, "Please, let this be real." Inside the Terran ship Indomitable, Captain Arden Cross stood at the command deck. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp eyes that seemed to see both near and far. Around him, his crew worked with calm discipline. The ship itself was a masterpiece of Terran engineering. Layers of armor protected its hull. Rail cannons, missile batteries, and plasma turrets lined its sides. Within its core, the newest shield technology pulsed with energy. Every system was designed for survival and strength. Arden spoke quietly to his first officer, Commander Hale. "The Draxans are already watching us." Hale nodded. "They have numbers. We have only ourselves." Arden's gaze hardened. "Then we make ourselves enough." He turned to the communications officer. "Open a channel to the Valari Council. They need to hear our voice." A moment later, his image appeared in the crystal chamber of the Valari Council. The counselors leaned forward, staring at the human captain. "This is Captain Arden Cross of the Indomitable," he said. His voice was steady, carrying strength. "We know you are under siege. We know others have turned away. But Earth does not abandon those who ask for help. You are not alone anymore." The counselors were speechless. For the first time in many weeks, hope filled the hall. Admiral Kor did not wait. He ordered a wing of Draxan cruisers to intercept the Terran ship. From his point of view, this was a chance to show dominance. "Crush them," he commanded. "Show these Terrans what happens to those who challenge the Empire." The Draxan cruisers moved quickly, black shapes sliding through space like predators. They locked weapons on the lone Terran vessel. In the command deck of the Indomitable, alarms sounded. Commander Hale looked to Captain Arden. "Orders, sir?" Arden's eyes were cold, but his voice was calm. "Hold course. Do not fire until they fire first. Let them make the mistake." The Draxan cruisers drew closer, their weapons glowing. Across Valara Prime, people watched the skies, their hearts pounding. The first real test had come. Would the Terrans stand or would they fall? In the capital square, Elira and her grandfather joined the crowd. They looked up as streaks of light appeared high above, the beginning of the encounter. People held their breath, praying, whispering, clinging to one another. Then a Draxan cruiser fired. A beam of energy shot across the void toward the Indomitable. The Terran ship moved. Its shields flared bright, holding against the attack. And then, for the first time, the Indomitable spoke back. A single rail cannon fired. The projectile cut through the darkness faster than sight. It struck the Draxan cruiser, and in a brilliant flash, the enemy ship was torn apart. Gasps echoed across Valara. The people could hardly believe their eyes. One shot and a cruiser was gone. On the Draxan flagship, Admiral Kor rose in fury. "Impossible," he snarled. "No single ship can do this." But the battle had only begun. For the Valari, the sight was like fire in the night. Hope spread faster than fear. Children shouted in joy. Elders wept. Families embraced. For the first time since the blockade began, they believed survival was possible. Elira clutched her grandfather's hand. "They are real," she whispered. "They are fighting for us." Her grandfather's eyes shone. "Yes, child. Perhaps the sun is rising after all." In the council chamber, Mirai closed her eyes and breathed deeply. She could hardly believe it, but the truth was before her. One Terran ship was standing against the Empire. Councillor Reth's voice was fierce with new hope. "They came when no one else would, Terrans. Whoever they are with us now." But Councillor Thane still whispered a warning. "This is only the beginning. The Draxans will not forgive this insult. They will return in force." Mirai opened her eyes and looked toward the stars. "Then let them come," she said softly. "Because now we are not alone." And so, Part 2 ended with the Terran ship revealed in full strength, its captain declaring protection, its weapons proving their power. For the Valari, despair had given way to hope. But for the Draxans, the arrival of the Indomitable was an insult they would never forget. The storm was only beginning. The black void of space around Valara Prime had become alive with movement. The Draxan fleet, angered and humiliated by the sudden appearance of a single Terran ship, surged forward like a tidal wave. Hundreds of cruisers, frigates, and destroyers moved in perfect formation, their weapons primed and deadly. High above, the Terran warship Indomitable waited, sleek and silent. Its shields glowed like a heartbeat and rail cannons hummed with quiet power. Captain Ardencross stood at the command deck watching the enemy approach. His eyes were calm, but his mind raced through strategies. "Admiral Kor thinks numbers will win," he said quietly to Commander Hale. "But he does not know humans. He does not know what we can do when cornered." Hale nodded, her fingers flying over the console. "Sir, they are closing fast. Weapons locked on our position. Ready to fire in T-minus 60 seconds. Good," Arden replied. "Let them make the first mistake." The Draxan fleet was massive. Their ships blocked out stars, forming a wall of black steel. Every cruiser was armed with heavy energy cannons, missile batteries, and boarding drones. Their flagship, larger and taller than any other vessel, led from the center, a towering monument to empire and fear. Admiral Kor's voice boomed through the fleet's communications channels. "Destroy that Terran ship. Show them the power of the Draxan Empire. No one challenges us and lives." The Draxans fired. Beams of blue energy streaked across space, hitting the Indomitable's shields. Sparks flew against the Terran vessel's hull and alarms blared. The crew remained calm, trained beyond fear. "Shields at 90%, reported Lieutenant Soren, monitoring energy levels. "They're testing our defenses." "Let them," Arden said. "Wait until they overcommit." The Terran ship moved with speed that defied expectation. While the Draxan fleet believed it could overwhelm a single vessel with sheer numbers, the Indomitable danced through the void, its engines leaving trails of silver light. It used unconventional patterns, dodging beams, slipping between cruisers, and striking targets at angles the enemy had never anticipated. The first rail cannon fired. A Draxan destroyer exploded in a brilliant flash, its metal hull tearing apart. Shockwaves rippled through nearby ships. The Draxans had never seen weapons move like this. On the bridge of a Draxan cruiser, officers panicked. "This is impossible," one screamed. "Their ship is smaller, weaker. How do they destroy us like this?" Kor's mask was unmoved, but his claws clenched tightly. "Adapt," he said. "Do not underestimate them. They are dangerous, more dangerous than we imagined." The Valari watched from the surface as the battle unfolded. Every sensor, every observatory feed showed the struggle in orbit. People gasped at every flash of destruction. Children pointed at the sky. Farmers dropped their tools and stared. Elira could not believe her eyes. "One ship," she whispered. "One ship against hundreds?" Her grandfather patted her hand. "Yes, child. And yet here it stands. The humans fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. That is what makes them extraordinary." Inside the Indomitable, the crew worked with perfect coordination. Rail cannons, missiles, and drones launched simultaneously. Shields flexed, absorbing impact after impact. Every system operated in harmony. It was not just technology. It was human ingenuity, adaptability, and courage. Captain Arden spoke calmly to his officers. "Focus on the flagship. Once it falls, the fleet will lose morale. The rest will scatter." Commander Hale frowned. "Sir, it is heavily shielded. Standard weapons cannot pierce it." Arden smiled faintly. "Then we change the rules. Fire the drones first. Overload their shields. Then the rail cannons will do the rest." The drones swarmed. Tiny, fast, and nearly invisible, they moved like schools of predatory fish, slipping past Draxon sensors and into critical systems. Explosions rocked the flagship. Alarms blared. Chaos spread like wildfire through the enemy fleet. "Commander!" Arden shouted. "Now!" The Indomitable's rail cannons fired in rapid succession. Energy beams tore through the flagship's hull. The ship trembled, shields flickered, and then, with a blinding flash, it exploded into a storm of fire and debris. Shockwaves rippled outward, knocking several cruisers off balance. The Draxon formation faltered. Confusion spread. Their fleet, previously confident, now moved in disarray. Admiral Kor's fury was silent behind his mask. "Impossible," he whispered. "A single ship, one human ship, has destroyed my flagship?" His officers looked at him, fear in their eyes. For the first time they realized that the Terrans were not like other species. They were dangerous, unpredictable, and clever. On Valara Prime, people could hardly believe what they saw. Children ran through the streets, pointing at the sky. Families hugged each other, tears of relief streaming down their faces. "They fight for us," Illyra said, her voice trembling with awe. "They fight for us?" Her grandfather nodded. "That is what makes them strong. Not just weapons, not just speed, but their hearts. They fight because they care. That is the power of humans." The battle continued for hours. The Indomitable moved with precision, striking cruisers one by one. Its shields held firm against the enemy's relentless fire. Human tactics were unlike anything the Draxons had studied. They did not follow traditional formations or predictable strategies. They adapted, learned quickly, and struck with surgical accuracy. Lieutenant Soren reported in awe, "They are outmaneuvering us at every turn." Captain Arden looked out at the enemy fleet, calculating every move. "Do not underestimate them," he told the Valari crew aboard the ship. "Every species has strengths. Humans survive because we do not fear the impossible. Today that will prove enough." Despite the victory, the Indomitable was not without damage. Small energy bursts had pierced minor shields. Sections of the hull were scorched. Yet the crew worked swiftly, repairing systems even as they fought. The humans were relentless. While other species might have retreated or panicked, they stood strong. Even Commander Hale, calm under pressure, admitted quietly, "Captain, they are relentless. Even when we are hit, we keep moving. We keep fighting." Arden's eyes were steely. "That is humanity. We do not stop. We adapt, we survive. That is why we are dangerous." The Draxon fleet, now confused and demoralized, began to retreat in small groups. Ships that had once pressed confidently now fled the battlefield. Their tactics had failed. Their confidence shattered. Admiral Kor's voice rumbled over the fleet, cold and threatening. "This is not over, Terrans. You will pay for this humiliation. You will regret challenging the Empire." But the Terrans did not respond. They pursued only to ensure the safety of Valara Prime, avoiding unnecessary risk. Their goal was protection, not revenge. On the surface, the people celebrated cautiously. The sky was still dangerous, but for the first time, hope was tangible. The Valari had watched despair turn into amazement. One human ship had stood against an empire and won. Illyra looked up at the sky, her voice trembling. They are incredible." "One ship, one human ship," her grandfather smiled. "Yes, child. And that is the lesson. Even the smallest force, with courage and skill, can change the course of fate. That is the essence of humanity." By the end of the day, the Draxon fleet had retreated beyond Valara Prime's system. The Indomitable, though slightly damaged, remained strong, its crew vigilant but proud. The humans had shown the galaxy that one determined ship, guided by courage and intelligence, could stand against overwhelming odds. Captain Arden Cross addressed his crew, his voice calm but firm. "Today, we have shown the Draxons the cost of underestimating humans. Today, we protected the innocent, and tomorrow we will continue to do so. That is our duty. That is our honor." The Valari, watching from below, began to understand a new truth. Humans were not weak. They were not reckless fools. They were protectors, warriors, and survivors. They were, in every sense, extraordinary. And somewhere deep in the hearts of the Valari, hope blossomed again, stronger than ever. The victory of the Indomitable had been swift, powerful, and awe-inspiring. The Draxon fleet had been forced to retreat, their flagship destroyed, their formation broken. Valara Prime breathed a collective sigh of relief, but the celebrations were cautious. Everyone knew this was only the beginning. Above the planet, the Indomitable hovered in orbit, its massive engines casting pale light across the clouds. Captain Arden Cross stood on the command deck, looking down at the surface below. Valara Prime's cities were still intact, its people safe, but the enemy would return. And when they did, the cost would be high. Damage report, Arden said to Commander Hale. Minor hull breaches. Shields at 85%. Engines fully operational. Hale replied, her voice steady. We can fight again, but we need to be careful. They will come back stronger, Arden nodded. Prepare the crew for another engagement. The Draxans will not forget this day. Neither will we. On the surface, the Valari tried to return to some sense of normalcy. Streets were alive with cautious celebration. Children played among the buildings, pointing at the sky as if to thank the Terran ship above. Families hugged each other, tears of relief flowing freely. Alira walked with her grandfather through the central square where small groups of people had gathered. Everywhere, conversations buzzed with hope. They fought for us, Alira whispered, her voice trembling with awe. One ship, and they defeated hundreds. Her grandfather nodded.
Yes, child.
But victories come at a price. Even the strongest cannot fight forever without consequence. That is why we must be ready. The Draxans will return. Alira shivered but held his hand tightly. She had begun to understand what courage meant. Not just strength, but determination in the face of impossible odds. Back on the Indomitable, Captain Arden called a crew meeting. The command deck was alive with lights, screens, and the quiet hum of energy systems. Officers and engineers gathered to hear him speak. The Draxans will be back, he said plainly. They have the resources, numbers, and fury to challenge us again. We survived today because of skill, precision, and strategy, but tomorrow may be different. We must repair, reinforce, and be ready to fight again. Hale raised a hand. Sir, we can hold them off if we strike first. But they will come in greater numbers. Even a small mistake could be catastrophic. Arden's eyes met hers. Then we do not make mistakes. We act as one. Every crew member has a role. Every system is vital, and most importantly, we remember why we fight. For the innocent. For those who cannot fight for themselves, the crew nodded. In that moment, the human determination that had carried them through countless battles became clear to all. They were not invincible, but they were relentless. On Valara Prime, the council met once more in the Great Hall of Crystals. Councillor Mirai, still overwhelmed by awe and relief, addressed the group. The Terrans, they saved us. One ship, one crew. They turned despair into hope. But this victory is temporary. The Draxans will not forgive what has been done. We must prepare our defenses, support the humans, and ready our people for what may come. Councillor Reth slammed his hand on the table. We do not wait, we cannot. We fight alongside them. If the Draxans return in force, we will resist. We owe the humans that much. They risked everything for us today. Councillor Thane, ever cautious, shook his head. I admire their courage, but we are not soldiers. Our people are not ready for war. We need guidance, strategy, and protection. The Terrans cannot fight every battle for us. Mirai sighed, her mind heavy. She knew Thane was right. Yet, even in caution, hope was alive. Meanwhile, far from Valara Prime, the Draxans regrouped. The remnants of their fleet moved to a nearby system. The ruins of their flagship still glowing faintly in space. Admiral Kor paced the bridge, his armor reflecting the dim light of distant stars. They are not ordinary, he growled. One ship, one small species, and they destroyed my flagship. My fleet, defeated by a single Terran vessel. This is unacceptable. His officers, anxious and uneasy, spoke quickly. What should we do, Admiral? They are dangerous, and they fight with tactics we have not seen before. Kor's voice was sharp and cold. We learn, we adapt. We will return with everything we have. But this time, there will be no mercy, no hesitation. The Terrans will pay for their defiance, and Valara will fall under the full might of the Empire. Back on Valara, people were not blind to the consequences. Farmers and merchants gathered to repair the damage caused during the blockade. Families worked together to rebuild, but every conversation carried a note of caution. The Draxans would return, and the Terrans would fight again. Alira and her grandfather sat under a tree outside the capital. The night was quiet, the stars shining as if to remind them of the vastness of space and the dangers it held. Grandfather, she asked softly, will they come back? Will the humans still protect us? He placed a hand on her shoulder.
Yes, child.
They will come, but we must also be ready to help ourselves. Courage alone cannot protect a world. We need unity, preparation, and belief, and we must trust in the humans who have come to our aid. Elira nodded, understanding that the hope they had felt after the first battle was only the beginning. On the Indomitable, repairs continued. Teams of engineers moved through the ship's corridors, welding, recalibrating, and restoring systems. Weapons were tested, shields strengthened, and engines reinforced. Despite exhaustion, every crew member worked tirelessly. The Terrans knew the enemy would not wait long. Hale approached Arden as he reviewed strategic maps. "Sir, our current strategy will hold, but if they return with twice the fleet, even 3 times, we could be in real danger." Arden's eyes were steady, focused on the stars beyond the viewport. "Then we become unpredictable. We fight smarter, not just harder. That is the advantage humans have always had. We think beyond what others expect. The Draxons plan with arrogance, not imagination. That is where we strike." Hale nodded. She understood. Humans thrived in impossible situations. It was not just their technology. It was their creativity, adaptability, and sheer will to survive that made them dangerous. Weeks passed. Valara Prime recovered slowly. Food supplies were replenished. Children returned to schools. Markets opened, full of cautious optimism. But above it all, the shadow of the Draxons lingered. Every day, sensors scanned the skies for movement. Every night, the people prayed silently that the Terrans would stay, that their protection would hold. And the Terrans did not leave. The Indomitable patrolled the system, a silent guardian above Valara Prime. Its presence was a constant reminder to the Draxons. Humans would not abandon the weak. Elira often watched the ship from her village. It seemed enormous, invincible, yet alive. She imagined the crew moving inside, making decisions that affected countless lives. She realized something important. Humans were not invincible. They could be hurt. They could fall. But they had something that made them stand against overwhelming odds, a courage and determination that inspired others to rise as well. Then, one morning, alarms on the Indomitable sounded sharply. Long-range sensors had detected a new movement. Far beyond the system, massive ships were approaching. Not hundreds this time. Thousands. And they were organized, precise, and bristling with weapons. Captain Arden studied the data silently. "The Draxons return," he said softly, "with everything they have." Hale's hand tightened on the console. "Sir, this is more than before."
"Can we survive this?"
Arden's gaze swept across the stars. "We must, we will. And Valara will survive with us. That is the price of defiance." Below, the Valari felt the tension rising. The celebrations were over. Fear returned, but it was tempered by hope. They had seen humans fight and they had survived. Now the challenge would be greater, but they would not face it alone. In the command deck, Arden turned to his crew. "Today we repair. Tomorrow we fight. The Draxons think this is a warning. It is not. This is only the beginning of what humans can do when the weak call for help. And we will answer every time." The Terran crew nodded, ready for the coming storm. Outside, the stars burned brightly, the calm before the next battle. The universe had witnessed the courage of one species, and the Draxons would soon learn that humans never gave up, never surrendered, and never abandoned those in need, and so, the Indomitable prepared for its greatest challenge yet. The darkness of space above Valara Prime was no longer silent. Thousands of Draxon ships advanced, their black hulls stretching across the stars. Weapons primed and shields glowing menacingly. Their intent was clear. They would crush the humans and take Valara without mercy. High above, the Terran warship Indomitable floated calmly, its hull gleaming silver under distant starlight. Inside, Captain Arden Cross stood at the command deck, eyes sharp, calculating every possibility. The ship had endured battles before, but this was the largest force they had faced yet. "Status report," Arden said. Commander Hale's fingers flew over the console. "Shields at full power, weapons online, drones ready. We can engage, but their numbers. They are overwhelming." Arden's jaw tightened. "Numbers mean nothing if we fight smart. Today we teach them why humans are dangerous when we protect the innocent." In the council chambers of Valara Prime, Councillor Marai spoke to the gathered people. Her voice was strong despite the fear in her heart. "The Draxons return stronger than ever," she said, "but we are no longer powerless. The humans will fight for us and we will stand together. Courage is not only in weapons, it is in the heart. And today our hearts will not fail. Counselor Reth slammed his hand on the table. We fight beside them. If the humans can stand against an empire, then we can stand as well. Valara will not surrender. Alira and her grandfather stood among the crowd. She looked at him, eyes wide. They will win, won't they? Her grandfather smiled faintly. Perhaps. But even if they fall, the courage they show will echo forever. That is the legacy of bravery. Above, the battle began. The Draxans opened fire, waves of energy beams and missiles streaking toward the Indomitable. The ship's shields flared with energy, holding firm against the assault. Evasive maneuvers, Arden ordered. Use every angle, every system. Do not give them a single easy target. The Terran ship twisted and rolled with unmatched speed. Energy beams glanced off the shields, missiles were intercepted by drone swarms, and the hull remained intact despite the intensity of the attack. The Draxans, confident in their numbers, had not expected such precision. Lieutenant Soren reported with a mix of awe and disbelief. They are moving faster than we anticipated. Their ship is destroying our formations with every strike. Arden's lips curved slightly. That is the point. They expected fear, confusion, surrender. They did not expect humans. The Terrans fought not with brute force alone, but with strategy and ingenuity. Small groups of Draxan cruisers were isolated and destroyed with careful strikes. Rail cannons fired from unexpected angles. Drones infiltrated enemy ships, sabotaging systems and creating chaos from within. On the surface of Valara Prime, the people watched in wonder. Families huddled together as flashes of light tore across the night sky. Children whispered prayers and cheers. They had never seen anything like this. Elira could hardly breathe. One ship, one crew, against all of them. Her grandfather nodded. Yes, child. But courage is not measured by numbers. It is measured by heart. And today the Terrans' hearts are stronger than the Draxans' fleets. Despite their skill, the Terrans paid a price. Sections of the Indomitable were damaged, some weapons offline temporarily, shields fluctuating under continuous fire. The crew worked tirelessly, repairing systems even as they engaged the enemy. Commander Hale reported, shields at 70%. Engine strain increasing. We can continue, but only for a short while if they maintain pressure. Arden nodded calmly. Then we end this quickly. Focus on the flagship. Its destruction will scatter the rest. Every human aboard knows their role. We strike with precision and courage. The Draxan flagship, the largest and most dangerous of the fleet, moved forward. Its weapons locked on the Indomitable, intending to crush the Terrans once and for all. Admiral Kor's voice boomed over the fleet's channels. This ends now, humans. You will die and Valara will be ours. Arden's response was calm, steady, and unwavering. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. That is our mission. And today your empire learns what humans can do. The Indomitable unleashed its drones, rail cannons, and energy weapons in perfect synchronization. The flagship shuddered under the assault. Shields flickered, systems overloaded, and explosions rippled across its hull. The battle was fierce. Every second counted. Smaller Draxan ships tried to assist their flagship, but the Terrans had anticipated every move. They struck with precision, always one step ahead. The flagship could not withstand the coordinated attacks. With a final, brilliant blast from the Indomitable, the massive ship tore apart in space, a storm of fire and debris spreading across the battlefield. The remaining Draxan fleet faltered. Morale broke as crews watched their largest vessel destroyed. Ships scattered, some retreating, some surrendering. For the first time, fear had entered the hearts of the Draxans. Admiral Kor, aboard his escape vessel, watched the destruction silently. Rage boiled within him, but he understood one truth. The humans were not ordinary. They were extraordinary. One ship, one crew, and yet they had destroyed his empire's pride. On Valara Prime, the people cheered. They hugged each other, tears streaming down faces once pale with fear. Children ran through the streets shouting and pointing at the stars. The Valari had survived and the humans had made it possible. Elira turned to her grandfather. They won! They really won. He nodded, his eyes shining. Yes, child. And the lesson they leave us is greater than victory. Courage, loyalty, and the willingness to fight for the weak. That is the true power of humans. The Indomitable floated above the planet, its hull scarred but its systems intact. The crew worked quietly, surveying the battlefield. They had won, but they were not arrogant. Every life lost, every damage sustained reminded them of the cost of protection. Captain Arden addressed his crew. Today we showed the galaxy the strength of humans. Not in numbers, not in arrogance, but in heart, skill, and determination. Remember this victory and remember why we fight. We fight so others can live free. Hale nodded. And the Valari will never forget us, Captain. They now know humans are protectors. Arden's gaze swept across the stars. Good. Let that be our legacy. One day, every corner of the galaxy will learn that when humans answer a call for help, they do so with everything they have. For the Valari, the aftermath of the battle was both celebration and reflection. The Draxans had been defeated, but the threat was not gone. Yet the courage they had witnessed inspired a new era of confidence. Their people worked together to repair damage, strengthen defenses, and learn from the humans. Illyra looked up at the Indomitable, its massive form floating like a guardian above her world. I want to be brave like them, she whispered. Her grandfather smiled. You already are. You learned today what courage looks like, and one day you may carry that lesson forward. The story of the Indomitable spread quickly, across Valara, and soon across neighboring systems. Tales of one human ship standing against an empire became legend. Humans were no longer seen as reckless wanderers. They were powerful, dangerous in the right way, and above all, protectors of the weak. In the stars beyond Valara, the Terrans continued their journey, ready for the next call. They knew the galaxy was vast and danger was always near. But wherever the weak cried for help, wherever injustice threatened, humans would answer. And the name of the Indomitable would echo forever as proof that courage, determination, and ingenuity could change the course of the universe. And so, Valara Prime was saved not by numbers, not by fleets, but by the courage of one species willing to risk everything for others. The humans had shown what it meant to be extraordinary. The legacy of the Indomitable was born, a symbol of hope, courage, and the truth that even in the darkest times, humanity would stand for what was right. The stars burned brighter that night,